hands against the cross. No, he died with the palm of his hands against the cross, as in that picture, which was drawn by my daughter, by the way, with the thumbs pointing down. That's the actual position of the correct anatomical position of the crucifixion. And by the way, for viewers, if you'd like to feel in the back of your wrist, you can have a try now. If you feel in the back of your wrist about here, you find a little hole. Yeah. Little hole there. That's called Desdot's point. Viewers, if you'd like to have a little feel here, in the back of your wrist here, you found a little hole. You know, there it is. You know, those Romans, they had soldiers who did nothing else but crucify people, and they used to look for that hole, and they used to put the nail right through there. And you can see that, go back to the pictures, you can actually see that, that is the correct place in the wrist. You see, if they put the nail through the palm of the hand, the weight of the body, Jesus weighed about 175 pounds, would have just ripped through the soft flesh of the hand. No, it had to go through the wrist. But of course the medieval people didn't know that. And by the way, on the shroud, I don't know if you can see that, you can't see the thumb. And that's because I've shown you the anatomical position of the hand against the cross. When Jesus' body was weighing down on that nail through his wrist, his hand became like a claw with the thumb pronated into the wrist. It just proves the authenticity of the shroud. And there's the nailing of the feet, and there's the blood coming from the nailing of the feet. We know exactly where the nail went through the second and third metatarsal spaces. And you can also see on the shroud where the lance was put through by the Roman soldier between the 5th and 6th right ribs. You can see the blood pooling on this picture here on the, if you look at the picture just for a second, you can see the blood pooling on the left-hand side there where my pointer is, as coming out of the chest cavity. So there we are, authenticity of the shroud, it's absolutely authentic. Now we get to the really interesting stuff. Interesting, wow.
You can see from the information you're releasing there that he went through a lot of pain, serious pain.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, I've got a special presentation which is also free just on the crucifixion, and it's just the most awful. You know, we got this word excruciating. Yeah. The word excruciating means the most terrible pain, and that's what poor Jesus had to go through. So you and I can go to heaven.
Hallelujah. But then in 1976,
yeah,
NASA, discovered a three-dimensional decoding. Encoding.
That's right.
Can you tell us a bit about this?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, now this is really, really interesting. You see, in 1976, we're talking about the moonshot, basically. And they wanted to know what the back of the moon looks like. So what they did is they took lots and lots of photographs of the back of the moon. They sent an orbiting satellite around the back of the moon, took lots and lots of photographs, and they got all these photographs and fed them into a great big computer called a VPA image analyzing computer. And what this thing, there are these guys here. You can see the NASA picture up on the top left there and the Shroud of Turin top right, okay? And this guy, he's a really prominent physicist. There is actually the VPA image analyzing computer. And this guy is called Dr. John Jackson. He's a physics professor in the US Air Force Academy. And so they knew what the back of the moon looked like, and they got a three-dimensional image of that. And somebody said, well, look, why don't you put the Shroud of Turin under this VPA image analyzing computer? Because the Shroud's always been controversial. So they said, okay, let's do it. So they did it. And what did they find? They found that the Shroud of Turin is unique, absolutely unique. It's three-dimensional. It's the only two-dimensional image on the planet that is dimensionally encoded. Can you see there the three-dimensional picture of the face of Jesus? A three-dimensional picture of the face of Jesus. There's a good one there. And it also applies to his whole body. So something happened at the resurrection which caused the whole of the Shroud of Turin to be dimensionally encoded in 3 dimensions. That's amazing. It's dramatic, it's powerful. There's no way Leonardo da Vinci or anybody else could do it. There's no way anybody do it now. Nobody can do it. Nobody can do it. It's 3-dimensionally encoded. It's absolutely fantastic.
You mean it's technically impossible?
Nobody, if you gave people the entire US budget deficit, they wouldn't be able to do it, because nobody can do that. Nobody can get a bit of cloth and put 3-dimensional encoding on it. Nobody can do it. We know how it's done, because we'll come to that, because Dr. August Aceta showed us how it's done. But nobody has ever been able to produce a Shroud of Turin. Do you know what? It'd be easier for Leonardo da Vinci to design and launch the Hubble Space Telescope than to design the Shroud of Turin. Much easier.
Wow.
Much easier, because technically that's been done. Nobody can do this now. So just put it in perspective. Leonardo da Vinci, if you think he could have designed and launched a space telescope, well, that's one thing. He was a very clever guy. He could have done that. But nobody on planet Earth can do this. So wow. Leonardo da Vinci couldn't have done the Shroud of Turin. This is authentic, but it's a radioactive piece of cloth. And the question is, how did that radioactivity get there? That's the real thing.
That's right. So, but the thing is, thinking like a secular person or like a skeptic, could the Shroud of Turin be a fraud? Is it possible in any way? Because
it's absolutely impossible. Just spend a little bit of time, because everyone has been mesmerized by this rubbish. That the Shroud of Turin is 1325 approximately. It's got a lot of radioactivity, and the reason for that, we'll come to that. But we need to actually spend just a few minutes just showing that Leonardo da Vinci could not possibly have done it, nor can anybody else. Leonardo da Vinci couldn't have created a Shroud of Turin. He was a very clever guy. By the way, that was Barry Schwartz, the official photographer, and he's publicly stated not once but many, many times over the phone to me as well, that the Shroud of Turin couldn't be created by the cleverest scientists in the world today. So it's not just me who says that. That's the official photographer of STERP. However, as I've already said, there's the Hubble Space Telescope. He might have been able to do that, but he certainly couldn't do the Shroud. So let's move on. So nobody can create a fake Shroud of Turin in 2009. So here's my challenge to all the skeptics out there. If you wanted to create if you really, really believe that the Shroud of Turin was created by Leonardo da Vinci or anybody else, let's just consider the challenges you've got. First of all, you've got to get a huge piece of first century cloth which will convince the leading world authority, that's Madame Mestier Fleury of the Switzerland Textiles Museum, to say that this is a first century piece of cloth. Okay? Then you're going to get on it all these pollen from Jerusalem and the calcium aragonite from Jerusalem. And then you've got to get 2 separate coins, and by the way, these are virtually unobtainable. There are only 5 available on planet Earth.
Wow.
But you've got to get 2 minted AD 29, all right, and get them you've got to get them in the right place on the Shroud. And then you've got to get you've got to get everything right. You've got to get scourging and the crown of thorns and the crucifixion nails and the Roman lance all in the right place. And then you've got to make sure that the blood is type AB and exactly matches the Shroud of Oviedo, which is in a lockbox, guarded in Oviedo in Spain, all right? And that's all pretty simple stuff, by the way. You've then got to do something else. You've now got to do something which nobody can do today. You've got to scorch an image of a crucified man onto this linen which you've discovered and done everything else to it using an unknown laser radiation technique which nobody has today. In 2010, nobody has this, and it must include distance imaging properties, which will convince the NASA that this is the genuine article. All right, and nobody can do that today. Then what else have you got to do? You've got to backdate your carbon dating to 1325. You've got to be able to take it back to the British Museum and say, here's another one, date this, and it'll be 1325. Nobody knows how to do that either. And then you've got to get those poker burn holes in it. That's another problem. But then you've got a really difficult problem, because you've got photographic experts, nuclear physicists, botanists, archaeologists, historians, forensic pathologists, radiologists, carbon dating experts, textile experts, and experts in ancient antiquities, all of which have studied this thing and say it's genuine. There are some of their names, not all of them, just some of them, and you've got to convince them, and there's about 20 there, but there are literally thousands of them, and then you've got to do something else, all right? Because you have got to come up with some technology. If you think that Leonardo da Vinci created this thing, you have got to tell me how he did it. Because if I told you, let me look at the viewer now, let me look at the view. I say to you, look, I want you to create something using time technology. Time technology will be available in 600 years' time, and I want you to create an image using time technology. We don't know what it is because it isn't available right now, but I want you to use it. Now, Leonardo da Vinci lived about 600 years ago, and he's used some technology which wasn't available till 1976.